Hey everyone, welcome back to Gotcha Interact. In today's video, we're going to be talking about a very highly sought after character that's going to be upcoming later on in later versions of Penacony, Rappa. And so I know, Vixen, for you, this is a character you've been waiting for a very long time, and I'm sure you're not alone on that, because after I saw her design too for the first time, yeah, guys, she looks pretty good. Anyways, let's jump right in. And Vixen, what can you tell us about just, I guess, starting with her basic attack?
Well, in general, looking at her basic attack, but also she's going to be an imaginary 5-star erudition character. So if you are looking forward to some sort of character that's an erudition unit, keep in mind that this might be something that might be up your alley. If you're in the need of something that's a little bit more on the imaginary side, keep that in mind as well. But yes, going ahead and talking about her basic attack, she has a regular basic attack, but she also uses her ultimate to get an enhanced basic. So I'm going to talk about the basic first, then I'll talk about the enhanced basic afterwards. The regular basic attack states that it deals imaginary damage equal to 100% of Rappa's attack to one designated enemy unit. Pretty simple. Next, looking at her enhanced basic attack called Ningu Demon Bane Petal Blade. The first two hits at this point in time, as soon as you go into this enhanced basic attack, the first two hits deal imaginary damage equal to 80% of Rappa's attack to one designated enemy unit. That's the first hit. The second hit is imaginary damage equal to 40% of Rappa's attack to adjacent units to the enemy that was hit. The third hit deals imaginary damage equal to 80% of Rappa's attack to all enemy units. Basically, once you use your burst, which Rift will get into later, basically you're going to get to a point where you immediately have 3 separate hits and instances that you can use these basic attacks. And it's basically allowing 3 attacks all in one basic attack chain, if that makes any sense. So you might have to hit the button 3 times or your attack button 3 times, but that's what you're doing. When attacking enemies that don't have imaginary weakness, the enhanced basic attack can still deal toughness reduction equal to 50% of the original toughness reduction value, but is unable to recover any skill points. When breaking the weakness as well, it will trigger the imaginary weakness break effect with this, like the basic attack.
Yeah, definitely sounds very interesting. I can't wait to kind of discuss more about that and talk about certain things that she might be able to do. But let's look quickly at her skill, because her skill is very basic. It's just going to deal imaginary damage equal to 120% of Rappa's attack, assuming this is at level 10, to all enemy units on the field, which is nice. I mean, it kind of makes sense. She is an erudition type of character, so, right, she's going to hit everyone. So that's basically all we have right now for the skill. If this changes in the future, who knows, and we may cover that. But as for now, that's all it does. So let's jump right into the ultimate that has to do a little bit with the enhanced basic. When Rappa uses her ultimate, you're going to enter the seal form state, and you're immediately going to gain 1 extra turn. And then you're also going to gain 3 points of chroma ink. Now remember that, because that's going to come up later. At the same time, you will also increase your weakness break efficiency by 50% and your break effect by 30%. Now, while you are in the seal form state, it will enhance the basic attack, but you cannot use the skill and the ultimate during this time. So that is something to keep in mind. After using this enhanced basic attack, you're going to consume 1 point of the chroma ink that I mentioned earlier, which you get 3 of when you use the ultimate. And when you deplete those, then you will exit the seal form state. So in other words, you kind of have 3 major hits to work with that enhanced basic that Vixen talked about earlier. So when looking at those 3 main components of a kit, as with any character, the basic attack, skill, and burst, or the ultimate, it's more or less weaving the ultimate with the enhanced basics when it comes to Rappa, and the skill is kind of just there if you need it. It is nice to hit all enemies if you need the extra break.
Now taking a look at her talent, Ninja Tech Endurance Gauge. Whenever an enemy target's weakness is broken, Rappa deals 10 toughness reduction that ignores weakness type to adjacent targets, which I know doesn't sound like too much, but she gets more with a technique, so that can be a little bit more helpful as well. And it deals break damage equal to 180% of Rappa's imaginary break damage, and the toughness reducing effect works only on enemy targets that are not yet weakness broken. When breaking enemy weaknesses, basically it's the same, it'll trigger that imaginary weakness break effect. But Rift, looking a little bit beyond that, let's go ahead and look at the bonus abilities. The first one is Ninjutsu Inscription, Withered Leaf. When an enemy target's weakness is broken, increases the break damage it takes by 3%. This value is additionally increased by 1% for every 100 of Rappa's current attack that exceeds 2,000, very similar to what we see in someone like Firefly. Up to a maximum additional increase of 12%, this effect lasts for 2 whole turns.
Now let's look at her second bonus ability, called Ninjutsu Inscription Sea Echo. This states that during seal form, which again comes from her ultimate, After Rappa uses that enhanced basic attack to deal damage to a weakness broken enemy target, it will convert the toughness reduction from this instance of damage, normally if they had the shield still, to one instance of 60% super break damage. So that is very cool. And also, real quickly looking at the third bonus ability, this just states that when an enemy target's weakness gets broken, Rappa regenerates 2 energy. If the target is an elite enemy, she additionally regenerates 8 energy, so it sounds like for a total of 10 energy. So wrapping all of this stuff up in a nutshell, I mean, it's all pointing back to using her ultimate, and you really want to use that and going all into these kind of break type of, just damage. And with the weakness breaking and all of this, the toughness reduction, it does, like you said, Vixen, seem kind of like another Firefly, but of course with a very unique kit, and it's still different, but in the imaginary department. And so I imagine, no pun intended, that's going to be pretty good, especially for certain bosses in the game. I mean, everyone knows Kafka's a pretty relentless boss, and, needing the physical wind and the imaginary for her, while Firefly can still be used because Firefly applies fire, which is why Firefly is so good right now, and I think Firefly will remain to be a great character just because of that. I think still a character like this, though, Rappa, just to have that erudition imaginary, it just seems so cool. And the only other character I feel like even semi fills the role, but still really doesn't, guys, is Imbiber du Luné. I couldn't think of anyone else because Dr. Ratio is very single target. He can't even hit more than one enemy. Everything he does is single target. He's a hunt character, so that makes sense. So, and then the problem with Imbiber du Luné, I'm sorry if I break some of your guys' heart, but he takes a lot of heavy investment. He's been somewhat power crept, maybe more than somewhat. And so it's just an expensive team to build if you still want to build an Imbiber du Luné to this day. That's a very expensive team to go after because it's just earlier on, right? It's just going to take more to make it competitive with the characters we have now. They're just simply more powerful. And so Rappa is definitely, I think, going to be better. Now, once again, can't know that for sure because she's not out yet, but I imagine she will be just because she's working with a lot of break. We saw, as we were reading through a lot of these skill descriptions, we saw super break damage, a lot of, weakness reduction and stuff like that. If you're using the typical break teams, if you're using Harmony Trailblazer, who's also imaginary, that's going to be pretty good. You can use Gallagher. I mean, Linksha is one of the new characters we're getting soon. So there's a lot of good team options I feel like there could be out there. But Vixen, what are some of your thoughts kind of looking at this character as a whole, I guess?
Well, I'm actually going to go a little bit different than you did in that department. And I think there's a few reasons why. The first thing that comes into mind is how she actually is not going to be useful for bosses. And we did see it even with the elite enemies in the bonus ability, right? It's going to take 5 times as much effort to break those shields at the least. Even with a, a weakness breaking character, regular enemies are very easy to break their weaknesses. And so with a boss, it's going to take about at least 5 times the amount of time to actually break it. So I don't feel like that, at the end of the day, I think with her being an erudition character and break, let's look at the other break effect teams we already have in play. We have a hunt unit, which is focusing on one enemy target, Boot Hill. Boot Hill focuses on one enemy. His whole kit is based around doing like a standoff. Like that's his entire character idea too, right? He's a cowboy. So it's all the one-on-one hunt, that whole idea of hunt, focusing on one enemy target. Right. Looking at Firefly, she's destruction. And although she hurts herself and then heals herself like a destruction unit, she still can hit AoE a lot of the times. Usually always with her, you're using her skill when you're in her enhanced, when you're in your ultimate for your enhanced skill and enhanced basics. But you're usually always using the skill and you're hitting 3 enemies at one time usually for that.
Right.
But usually those characters are extremely good for bosses like Rift was talking about. The issue I'm seeing with this character specifically, even though she does have weakness toughness, a weak toughness reduction and a lot of that help, I do feel like it's going to be a little bit more difficult because she can't throw on imaginary weakness on enemies. But the toughness reduction does allow you to kind of not have to worry about that to an extent. The only thing I'm keeping in mind is that she seems like she is now, instead of hitting one target specific like the hunt, destruction hitting more than one and maybe 2 or 3, she can now hit the entire enemy line, which is going to be extremely good for things like pure fiction. And if we're thinking about pure fiction, you're not really running into elite enemies extremely often. Now, I do understand that pure fiction, you do have elite enemies, but I'm talking like you're not seeing them very often. That's a very good thing because the whole point of Rappa is to make sure to hit a bunch of enemies at one time and do a lot of damage across multiple characters or multiple enemies. So I think with stuff like that, you want to keep that in mind when you're running her. I don't know if she's going to be a power creep for either one of the characters. We've already have her for a break effect. I agree with you on that. I don't think that she's going to do that at all.
Yeah.
I think she's just going to be the third instance of what break effect's going to bring. You have your single target, you have your kind of middle ground with Firefly, and Boot Hill being the single target. Now Rappa has multiple different types of enemies. So for me, it's extremely nice because I've already have some other really good teams that can really worry about the MOC, other parts of the MOC. But as soon as we start to talk about pure fiction, starting to lack in that department. So for me, seeing a character that could be extremely good for that is going to be good for me at least. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great analysis, honestly, and something that you should think about when we look at this character. And as we get closer to her release, you know, obviously you think about like what you're pulling. Especially if you're free to play, you don't just kind of like, unless you just play the game casually and you enjoy playing that way, you don't really care about getting to the end of MOC or these other end game modes. You're just here for the story. Then yeah, just pull whoever you want. If you like Rappa's design, I'm not gonna blame you for pulling, okay? Even if it's totally not what you need, because
agree.
her design is, yeah, her design is so good. Like yeah, I'm not gonna be judging there at all. If anything, I will envy you. But like for me, like it's hard to make a case for Rappa for like my account because I don't have any of the break stuff built, and you're probably sitting there thinking, Rift, why? Like why do you not? And it's just, guys, I just don't like. I like the follow-up stuff, so I've always been kind of tied to that. I pulled Topaz first release. I pulled Jade. You know, I just like that style. I mean, Fei Xiao is a character that's really gravitating to me because of the follow-up kind of idea. And so March 7th, you know, Moza, the new 4-star, like that's just the play style I like. And for me, I can't worry about like the meta or like what's gonna actually clear the end game 110% of the time, which right now in the game that tends to be Firefly, and most people wouldn't argue with that. Right, most people, because Firefly on paper is just really dishing out the most damage. And yes, there are other teams, like you have the Acheron teams, you know, there's all kinds of other things you can do, but Firefly is just super good, especially for a lot lower investment. Harmony Trailblazer being free, Gallagher was a pretty easy pickup during her banner, and you know, just things like that. So I think, you know, with Rappa, I just like that she's imaginary and erudition because we don't have that yet. And like I was mentioning earlier, the only character that kind of performed that way was Imbiber Lune, and he doesn't even hit 5 characters. He hits 3 at most, I think. I could be wrong on that. I'm sorry if I am. So I think she's gonna be fun, and I think she's gonna have a lot of potential. Also, this kit can change. There can be increases to the damage multipliers. There could be reductions. You never know. So a lot of this stuff you take with a grain of salt. They could completely rework some stuff, make her skill do even more than it does, because the skill right now is really just hitting every enemy on the field, and that's like it. It's like a Clara skill. You don't. It's like, okay, it's there and you can use it if you want the good damage or to get some physical break on the enemies. But really with Clara, all you care about is getting her ult up so she can do more counters, right? So maybe it's kind of like that. You're really not, it's there, the skill's there, but maybe for skill point sake, you don't want to use it maybe. It just, I feel like at that point would depend on your teams. If your team is already skill point hungry, or you're using supports, harmony characters, or nihility characters, and it's just a team where your other characters aren't skill point friendly in general, like Bronya, not very skill point friendly, as opposed to Sparkle, then maybe you want to stay away from it, but who knows? So I think there's a lot to think about.
I agree, and especially thinking on the other side of that, you know, looking at skill points, now thinking about energy, at least from what we're seeing, her ultimate's gonna cost 160 to get her ultimate.
Which is a lot.
Which is a lot, but her regular basic gives 20 back, her skill's giving back 30, and the enhanced basic is supposedly only giving 10 or so, but I'm gonna guess, I think it's 5, 5, and 10, so it comes out to 20. I think it's just kind of separated between the different hits. So, but once again, that's just a lot of energy. So with her as a character, you might see on a DPS character, it's kind of interesting, we might see an ER rope, which is once again very weird, but for her it might actually be necessary. And I think it's going to be a very big tussle to see, should we grab more break effect on the rope, or should we go for an ER rope? I think that's going to be an interesting tussle whenever she is a little bit closer to release for a lot of people, as they might try to grind for her and stuff ahead. As well as there are plenty of possible new relic sets that might fit her, might fit some other characters that are coming out in the future, which we might make a video on later as well. But well, that's everything we've got talking about Rappa. If you guys did like the video, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and check out our Discord as well. You know, with a lot of coming up with her, once again, like we've talked about, there could be lots of changes. So keep that in mind as you're getting ready for her. Let us know if you guys are kind of looking to pull her because she's just cool, or if she's just more or less someone that actually is kind of necessary for your account. Once again, just let us know down in the comments. Once again, thank you guys for watching the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.